Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth plenary session titled Global Energy Agenda, Redefining Alliances, Sovereignty and Strategic Dynamics. My name is Julien Touré. I'm very pleased to be your moderator for this session. The global energy landscape is undergoing a profound transformation, reshaping geopolitical balances, economic strategies, and question of sovereignty. The transition toward cleaner energy sources, combined with recurring crises in fossil fuel market, has accelerated the emergence of a new global energy order. This order is defined by the pursuit of strategic autonomy, diversification of supply chains, and growing competition over the technologies and resources that will power the future. The energy crisis of the early 2020s, intensified by geopolitical tensions and disruption in traditional supply routes, reveals the fragility of global interdependence. Countries are now reassessing their energy security policies, prioritizing domestic capacity, regional cooperation, and resilience. Meanwhile, the shift toward renewables, hydrogen, and critical minerals introduces new dependency, this time centered on access to rare resources, green technologies, and digital infrastructure that underpin the global energy transition. The result is a world in which energy no longer serves merely as a commodity, but as a strategic instrument reshaping foreign policy, trade, and technological development. Alliances are being redefined around the quest for stable, sustainable, and politically secure energy flows. For instance, the Gulf countries are investing in green hydrogen and diversifying beyond oil. Europe is redesigning its energy partnership with Africa and the Mediterranean countries, and emerging economies are asserting new roles as producers and innovators. For Africa, this evolving energy agenda represents both a challenge and an opportunity. For its part, through its investment in renewable energy, green hydrogen, and regional interconnection projects, Morocco has become a leading actor in the transition towards sustainable energy systems. Initiatives such as the Noor-Thora Complex, the Dakar Hydrogen Corridor, and partnership with European and African partners illustrates Morocco's strategic vision, positioning energy as both a pillar of sovereignty and a bridge for regional integration. As the world redefines its energy alliances, the central question becomes how to reconcile national autonomy with global interdependence. The path forward requires cooperation, responsible governance, and long-term vision to ensure that energy remains a source of collective security rather than conflict. That's quite a lot of topic we'll have to discuss this afternoon for this session. And let me now briefly introduce our distinguished speaker that have been tasked to address those issues. First, His Excellency Edward Heger, former Prime Minister of Slovakia. Welcome, Mr. Heger.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
His Excellency Igor Lukšić, former Finance Minister, Foreign Minister, and Prime Minister of Montenegro. Welcome. His Excellency Faris Razaev, Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Azerbaijan. Welcome. Her Excellency Amani Abuzaid, former Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy at the African Union Commission. Welcome. Tariq Amane, CEO at One Maroc. Welcome. And Raphaël Barrault, Chief Investment Officer at Mazda. Welcome. So, let me start with a first quite global or general question, maybe starting with you, Mr. Hager. How is the global energy transition reshaping geopolitical alliances and redefining notions of sovereignty?
Well, good afternoon again, and thank you to the organizers for having me here in this panel. The question is very, very good, and actually I can speak as a former prime minister that was in the office in the 2022 when basically this whole process started to speed up dramatically. I can speak out of my experience, and I have to say it's changing totally. Slovakia is a Central European country that was very dependent on the Russian oil and gas. And I think it wasn't just the case of Slovakia, it was the case of, I would say, the whole Europe, including Germany, Netherlands, and other big countries. The good thing is that Europe has quite well-developed infrastructure for delivering oil and gas. But the problem was that we all bet on just one resource, and we didn't diversify enough, even though it was discussed for several years, even in our documents, governmental documents, but somehow we didn't step into it. And when 2022, this war in Ukraine started and the prices went up to 10 times what it was before, we regretted, all of us in Europe regretted that we didn't take the steps ahead, because we paid a very high price for the difference for the gas and oil that we had to take from Russia during those years. And I remember at the European Council when this whole started, we discussed immediately, okay, what is the strategy? How can we diversify? How long it will take? And that way we realized it will take at least 4 years. So just imagine, as a country, you do have the infrastructure, but you don't have the resources. You don't have the channels to take so much gas, especially because it was during the winter and preparing for the other winter. So it was very, very difficult, and therefore, ever since, the countries already started to reassess, actually done many plans. Even during my government, that was still 2023, we did a lot of diversification contracts to get resources from other countries, other parts of the world. And I think it started the whole debate and also the strategies. So we are in a process where it's all started, but we are still developing it, and I see, and we're going to discuss that today, that the criteria that you based the future contracts that you're going to sign on, the reliability is so important, but the diversification as well. And I think that's a very, there's several lessons learned, but this one was very much that you cannot just count on one source if the partner doesn't show his credibility going forward. So, because that's what we paid a very high price for.
Thank you very much. Mr. Luxic, maybe I will continue our discussion with you. In the current changing global energy landscape, what do you think are the best tool for adaptation? Tool of adaptation. How do you adapt to this changing landscape?
Well, thank you very much for your question. And first of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to the conference. My first time in Tangier, and it's really a fantastic event. I watched your previous panel about the crisis of multilateralism, and it was titled, "Has the climate diplomacy finally died?" So it's implicating that it was already dying anyway, so this is the question whether it did die or not yet. But anyway, very, I think, negative perception of the process, and probably rightly so, because I must be open and say that BLM, despite everything, was probably a fiasco, unmasked fiasco, because I think the COPs over the several previous years basically were, in a way, unsuccessful, despite all the declared victories at the last moment, in the middle of the night, reaching that agreement. Because, and I think one of the panelists mentioned, a lot of pledges and no real follow-up. But I think, in a way, it is connected to what we are discussing now, because I think it is thanks to the climate diplomacy, thanks to COPs, thanks to all the process and the awareness that the climate changes that topics like energy have become even more important and even more in the focus of the of governments, of businesses, in universities, and so on and so on. And I think that's very relevant, because if you go back and look at civilizations and the history of civilizations, every time when, I mean, civilizations have changed thanks to energy, sources of energy that have changed. And we are now actually exploring new opportunities. It was also very interesting when one of the panelists said that it was due to some maybe unprincipled or principled or whatever I don't want to judge on that, but alliances between China, Saudi Arabia, and so on, there was no real success in terms of the declaration. Whereas at the same time, China is the front leading country when it comes to investments in renewables. Last year only, I think I remembered correctly the figure, installed capacity in renewables was double the size of combined installed capacity in both Europe and US together. That's the extent of how quickly things are changing in that part of the world. So it is with due reason to ask, so why would you still keep fossil fuels in any declaration? Why would you not support shifting away from that, and so on? I think the more climate diplomacy fails, and the more the number of pledges which we fail to implement. But I think the more focus on innovation, on technology, and that's something which is going on in parallel to whatever government's efforts are. And I think the stream of innovation, the changes that have been brought about in terms of not only solar, but also wind, but also geothermal. Geothermal is getting to be very important and possibly huge source of new clean energy. So these are things which are inevitably going to change the energy mix. For the past 20 years, it hasn't changed that probably much, and it is not to the liking of everybody who argues in favor of decarbonization, but it will probably change a lot in the next 20 or 30 years. Whether that's enough to arrest the change in the climate, probably not, but it will definitely have a big impact on the future societies, the way they organize, the way they operate. The question is, as far as, for example, Europe is concerned, whether our infrastructure is good enough and how much it should be invested to make it even better, and what sort of both funding and what sort of the policies should be in place for that, and obviously not only in Europe, but also in Africa and other parts of the world. So energy will, as always, during the history of civilization, affect tremendously what's going to happen in the following decades.
Thank you very much for these insights, Mr. Luksic. Mr. Razaev, next question for you. What role and place could Azerbaijan play in this global energy landscape that is changing quite rapidly nowadays?
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure and privilege to be in your good company. Azerbaijan has always been proud that we've been a very active and reliable, and I want to stress the word reliable, contributor to the energy security of the world and of the Mediterranean and Europe in particular. What we did in the early 90s is we basically reopened our part of the world, the crucial regions of the South Caucasus, Caspian Basin, and Central Asia for the outside players. We invited all commercial and government actors interested in oil and gas exploration. We have reignited the use of the existing ones, and we invested heavily in exploration of the new ones. So then we built the completely new infrastructure, state-of-the-art, very safe and secure for export of our hydrogen resources to the world market. The most recent figures which I have with me are something like last year, 2024, Azerbaijan produced around 30 million tons of crude oil and around 50 billion cubic meters of gas, all available for export. Today, my country is proud to hold a record for a number of countries we supply gas by pipeline, which is 14, not a single second country does match this record so far. Since August last year, we started supplying gas to Syria. And this project is playing a very important role in stabilization and normalization of situation. But we're not stopping with hydrocarbons, of course, for millions of reasons. The climate change, rather the fight against climate change being one of them. Azerbaijan was proud to host the COP29 summit last year, and we have just finalized our COP presidency and successfully transferred it to our friends and partners in Brazil. So we are investing heavily in green, alternative, and renewable energy. As of today, we produce around 20% of our domestic energy consumption from green, alternative, and renewable sources. Our target is to double that indicator and bring it up to 40% by 2030, which is in less than 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Abu Zaid, next question for you. Regarding your previous responsibility, how can Africa position itself as both a key supplier and a beneficiary in the global green energy revolution?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Allow me at the outset to thank Morocco and to thank MEDays for inviting me again. This is my 13th time in MEDays, so I'm honored and privileged to be in this forum. Maybe I will differ a little bit because when it comes to Africa, we talk about energy have been and continue to be a crisis in Africa since always. Knowing that more than half of our population does not have access to electricity. And 90% of our population, I'm talking about 1 billion Africans, do not have access to clean cooking. So if anyone really should talk about the crisis of energy, is Africa. However, this was not put forward, was not seen as an urgency. Until probably, by the world, until probably there has been an issue or a big war or crisis in Europe, then the world realized how important energy is to development, to the everyday life, to economy, and what have you. We did that way before. Maybe the turning point for us in Africa was in 2020, under COVID, when everything stopped. We only have 18 countries that are producers, exporters of gas and oil. Other countries are net importers. So we had the situation by which, we had a serious, we had to deal with it. So it's in 2021, we developed, we took the time to develop a master plan for energy in Africa, making sure that we use all the resources, because Africa is there's a wealth of energy resources, renewable and non-renewable of all sorts, the best solar, the best wind, the geothermal, hydro, and so we have this master plan for Africa in terms of energy, including the interconnections, quantified, and also with the finance needed, and we launched in 2021 what would be the largest electricity market in the world to be operational in 2040. And we were supported by the African Union doing that way before even the crisis in Europe. So we were very much proactive, and this is the big plan that we are implementing right now. Worthy to mention that Africa has also issued in 2022 a common position on energy, by which we stated, ahead of COP27 actually, by which we stated that, and officially that's the official position of Africa, that given where we are in terms of development, of energy poverty, that we are, the least emitting region of the world, we're only 3 to 4% of emissions, we're going to use all the resources that we are having in order to make sure that everyone has access, that our industrialization programs are ahead, that we move forward in terms of development. Having said that, we also stated that we will continue to improve the energy mix to give way to renewable energy and also nuclear energy, which is a wonderful emission-free energy. And as I speak, Africa has 55.5% of our energy mix coming from renewables, the highest in the world, anywhere in the world. It's in Africa. So just before anyone preaches on the importance of renewables, just know that we are ahead of anybody on that. And we have also 20 African countries in different stages in their nuclear journey. Nuclear also has developed a lot over these recent decades, so we want to exploit that for the benefit of our people. And saying this, I mean, talking about interdependence, it's also thanks to African gas, whether it's East Mediterranean or Algeria, that we supported Europe when the crisis hit. So it's something to be also remembered. And also, even when Spain, there was an issue in Spain with electricity, it was the interconnection between Morocco and Spain that was funded also by the African Development Bank that supported Spain. So this is how important our world is, and the proximity and the vicinity of Africa within the major players in the world gives us, you know, a fantastic position to develop this wonderful energy for ourselves, for our development, but also to share it with the world. I know that you asked a question about critical minerals. That's a very big subject. We just spent 3 hours earlier this morning debating about it. But again, critical minerals, again, that's a major issue when it comes to renewables. It's concentrated in specific parts of our continent and around the world in Asia and South America. We want to do the right thing, all of us. It's not just Africa. We don't want this to turn into a resource curse 2.0. We have to play this time to play it smart and use the minerals, renewable energy to once and for all look at, you know, value chains, diversification, development, and win-win situations instead of previous models in previous resources where the winner takes all and then we are left in poverty. So that's in a nutshell how things are in Africa for now. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Vous avez insisté sur l'importance des énergies renouvelables dans le mix énergétique, notamment en Afrique. Et je restais sur cette question des énergies renouvelables pour la question que je posais à Monsieur Haman. Quels enseignements peut-on tirer de la stratégie marocaine en termes d'énergie renouvelable, notamment sur les questions de la résilience et de l'intégration régionale à laquelle aussi faisait allusion Madame Abou Saïd il y a quelques instants?
Thank you very much, Mr. Touré. First of all, I want to join the distinguished panelists to thank MEDays for the invitation and to congratulate them for the success of the events. Maybe before to answer to your question, as we all know, one of the main behaviors and the targets of all people, all nations, all countries is to reach prosperity, growth, and this pass through economic and social development. And one of the main drivers behind this economical development is energy. Energy is everywhere. Energy is in transportation, in industry, in food, and in electricity also, and even in water. And one of the main headaches of all countries is how to reach, to secure the feeding of this energy, to have that kind of stability in the price in order to allow to establish a long-term perspective that will support the economic growth. And if we take the example of Morocco, of course, right now we have no gas, no oil. So, as you mentioned, renewable energy was one of the main driver that we use in order to support our economic growth. And before to address this topic, I want to handle and take the remarks of Dr. Abou Saïd regarding Africa. As you know, Africa, more than 600 million of people has no access to electricity. So before to talk about renewables, about decarbonization, we should talk about access of electricity. And this is the case of in many countries. One of them is Africa. And here also I want to highlight what we did in Morocco, because I believe that there is 3 momentum during the 30 recent year, which are very important to mention. First of all is access of electricity. And here we, in Morocco, develop a global program in order to reach access of electricity of all our population in '96. At that time, the access of electricity in rural area was 16%, 1/6. And with this heavy program led by ONE, the Moroccan Office of Electricity at that time, within 10 years, we reached 80%. Within 20 years, 98%, and today 99.9%, almost all the population has access. This was one of the main and first, let's say, step in order to reach our targets. Second one was in 2009, almost 13 years after. We were, as we all remember, 2007, international crisis. The price of oil gas goes up. Oil more than 150 at that time, coal more than 220, and of course we were facing this, impacting our economy. And we developed at that time, under the guidance of His Majesty, a strategy that was focusing on energy, renewable energy, as one of the main component of our strategy, with the first target, 42% to reach by 2020. In 2015, we increased this target to reach 52% by 2030. Right today, we have already reached 46%. This is, of course, has been success thanks to the support of also of our partners, lenders, and the African Development Bank with Dr. Abu Zaid, who was one of our main financiers to reach this. So we developed heavily wind and solar projects, and of course hydro. And we are also sharing this experience with our neighbors in Africa. And the latest, let's say, main milestone, we've seen it during the last 2 years, is how to, because let's say electricity represents only 25% of the energy consumption. And if we need really to reach our neutral carbon, we have to address the other economical sector, transportation, industry. So we have to look how to penetrate these sectors using renewables or alternative fuels. So electrification is one of the main drivers. So we are enhancing electrification in different subjects, in transportation, but also in industry. The other one is alternative fuels. Hydrogen is one of the potential. It's not there yet because the price is still high. And we all was in the momentum during the last 3-4 years. A little bit less this last time because other reality come back. And but the target and the trend is there. So today the main subject is how to address the other sector in order to have the. And one of the other aspects which is important is connectivity. Connectivity help with our countries on the electricity, but also on gas, help to share and to trade and to, of course, make alliance in order to secure the feeding of all fuel. And of course, Morocco is interconnected, as Dr. Abu Zaid said, with Europe, with Spain, by 2 submarine cable, but also by gas. We are interconnected also with our neighbors on the east, but also we are working on interconnection with Mauritania to really connect the whole Western African countries with Europe. So this is a few elements I want to highlight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Amani. One last question for Mr. Barrow. It's been mentioned that technology and innovation are of paramount importance when we think and talk about, especially about renewable energies. What factors matter from an investor point of view when you make decisions about investment in renewable energy?
Thank you, Julian. So I'll say it's about partnerships and having a comprehensive view as how you promote renewable energy projects. So just a step back, I represent Masdar here. Masdar, I don't know if you know, Masdar is a developer, investor, long-term owner of renewable power plants. So we work on PV projects, wind projects, onshore, offshore, geothermal. We were created almost 20 years ago in Abu Dhabi, and we started with a solar PV park of 10 megawatts in 2010. Today we have a portfolio of 50 gigawatts of projects across more than 20 countries. So how do we go from a 10 megawatt PV project in Abu Dhabi to 50 gigawatts across the globe? We do that by exporting our capital and our expertise. And when we consider exporting our capital and expertise, we look at partnership and the framework that we are going to be investing in. So partnership, and although we are a ultimately government-owned company, Masdar, I will speak here as a private investor because we behave like a private investor when we consider investment decisions. Right? We report to your board of directors, we have investment policy. So I will make my comments in as a perspective of a private investor. And so when we look at investing or exporting our capital into different countries, we look at the public-private partnerships. So we look at long-term commitments from governments. We look at their vision, the signals that they provide to investors, because our projects are long-term projects. Infrastructure projects typically are 20, 25, 30 years. So we need to have that long-term view and the long-term comfort that our investment will be sustainable. We make our return over 30 years. We don't make our returns over 2-3 years, right? So our projects have to be there for the long term. So partnership is very important with the local governments. And I was also saying comprehensive view. So we want to see that the countries we're going to, the countries have a comprehensive way to look at renewable energy. This is about, as I said, signaling, how much renewable energy we want over the long term. It's about policy. Without the policy, we can't invest. We need the comfort, as I said, for the long term. It's about ensuring infrastructure is there, right? Because you need to export the energy. So transmission networks have to be there. It's about education, having the right capabilities in the country. And if you have all that, then you have the comfort of investors and you will get the capital. You will also get financing. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. So amongst the 20 countries or so, I'm happy to say that we have a project in Montenegro. We have quite a few projects in Azerbaijan, and we are working also with ONA and Mazen in Morocco. So almost representing all countries here on this panel tonight.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Bao. I will have maybe two fairly general questions to follow up on our discussion, and then if the audience want to start thinking about questions for our speakers, be free to think about that. We will have time, I guess, to take some questions from the audience. But first, it's been mentioned a couple of times that energy... Yeah. You want to add something first? Or... Oh yeah, you can jump on what has been said, Mr. Bao. Yeah, obviously, sorry.
I think it's very important that we have an investor on the panel, because, I mean, all of us practically come from the public or government side. It's important to know how things are working on the ground. And previous to my political position, I was also in the financier side. So I want to add to what you just said, because the question begs itself: why is Africa not going fast enough when it comes to, if you have, I mean, the resources, whether it's the energy resources and the people, why aren't you going fast enough? Let us just also be frank. Renewable energy, particularly, is, as we speak, is still expensive. Not just because solar panels have been, the price has gone down, but the infrastructure around renewable energy is not existent very often. You need a different grid, a different interconnections, to cater for the intermittence. The issue of base load is still there. So in addition and to the other issues that Africa is suffering from. So this is one. Two, Egypt, Morocco, South Africa, because these are often the examples which are cited, are giving, wonderful examples. But we are talking about a continent of more than 50 countries. They are at different levels of development. 85% of the funding that should have gone to energy development in Africa is going to service debts. Moreover, Africa is suffering from an unfair risk perception that makes the cost of capital 3 to 7-fold more expensive than any other place in the world, even though every study, every work has demonstrated that Africa is the most profitable region, moreover, the second least risky region in the world. Which means that when we do a project in energy, it becomes really very expensive, 3 to 7 times more than any other place. I'm just trying to show you, how difficult it is and what is it that we are fighting against. Last but not least, there is also the issue of technology transfer. We understood very early on, before the crisis in Europe, our continent this is the highest or the fastest penetration of the internet. Our young people are very savvy when it comes to digital. Africa is using digital adopting digital everywhere. We need this energy and we need this. The Nexus energy and digital is providing us with new models of energy that did not exist before, that we want to explore, whether it's off-grid, distributed, mini grids, and so on and so forth. So our ambitions are big, and the attractivity of our continent, of our market, is still not there because of the challenges I just mentioned, especially the cost of capital. Having said that, we have to also find mechanisms that allow de-risking, that allow for concessional elements to encourage the continent to develop its energy infrastructure that will benefit Africa, and there is more. Actually, there is enough for us and to export. So it would be, going back to the theme, it would be a fantastic example of not interdependence, rather partnership when it comes to how energy could promote and solidify the partnership.
Thank you. Mr. Aya, you wanted to...
If I can add to this as a follow-up, and thank you very much for developing this subject. Europe is, I think, a very important customer and partner to Africa. But you have to understand one thing, the crisis 2022 that happened, that I described at the beginning, brought a different attribute to thinking of the countries in Europe. First, before that, we were considering price as the most and probably single important factor. Well, now it's price and it's trust, and security that goes with it. Because we saw how vulnerable we were. We couldn't disconnect from the Russian sources because we were so attached and we didn't have any other plan. Now those plans are being developed and we move forward. But it opens up a great opportunity for the continent of Africa to become a great and reliable partner. And in these opportunities, I see two areas. And I think this is what's important for Africa to think, and I think this is where Morocco and other countries that were mentioned are bringing the leadership in it. One is that you can provide green energy, green hydrogen. You can produce it and think of how do we bring it to Europe, which, of course, you're bringing some energy, but I think the more important opportunity, and if I can become a little visionary, speaking 10, 20 years from now, you can provide an environment where the capacity and even the production capacity will come to Africa, because we know that Europe is lacking labor. We have a big problem with enough labor. And I think this is a great opportunity for Africa to grow tremendously, as, for example, Central and Eastern Europe was growing 20, 30 years ago when the investors came. And you can, based on the energy that is, as I said, again, new instrument, not just of diplomacy, but also security, but especially prosperity for Africa. And if you develop this partnership that were mentioned, if the investors sit together with the governments, but from both continents, it must be a cooperation between the continents, where Europe says, you know what, if you want me to bring my business into Africa, these are the instruments of security I need to have, because they want to invest long term. And they don't want to risk the same risk that we had with Russia. So I think there are several opportunities that come up, the lessons learned. It must be a very good debate on the agreement and trustworthy, but it's going to strengthen Europe and Africa at the same time, because we are close to each other. You have people, you have potential, you have great potential for the energy production, very clean and also high volume of energy. And that way we can be a strong partners for decades and both grow together and be leaders together, not just in the energy, but also in the technologies and innovations. Because I think, last thing I say, Africa has a great opportunity to be innovation hub for AI. Because as we know, AI needs a lot of energy. And you are the ones who can be the basket for this energy. And it's going to help your people to develop, and therefore the trust, and also it's a question that deals with the migration, which is also very important. So there's so many things that go hand in hand. We just have to take it from the right corner, and I'm so glad that we are discussing it right now here in Tangier.
Your Excellency, just to let you know that since 24, we are determined to be producers of technology and AI, and we already have our strategy for AI as producers, not just recipients. So rest assured, we are working in earnest, and thank you.
A very important point you just made. I will stay on this question of cooperation and partnership. How do you make sure that this new energy order that is currently being developed create real fair cooperation between countries and continent, and does not become a new kind of unequal relationship, for instance, between developed rich country and developing country? Maybe Mr. Luxish, if you want to give us your thought on that.
It is definitely a good point. I think maybe I'm mentioning history too much, but I think it teaches us a lot of issues, and there are a lot of lessons learned. So I think, and Edward mentioned something very important. It's price, but it's also trust. So I think trust should go both ways. Europeans probably, in order to invest, expect some assurances, but I think also African countries expect a lot from European nations in terms of the business treatment, in terms of business opportunities and how it is done, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of aspects to it, and today we live in the world where it's something which people in Europe tend to ignore is that it's no longer a Eurocentric world. It hasn't been for many years, already decades, but some people still think that center of gravity is Europe and only Europe. And that's why you have very divergent views of something which is a pressing matter for Europeans, but it's not so much for people from other continents like Africa or Asia, Latin America. They have their own issues, and they have their own interests, and they have their own views. And the perception of trust is different in terms of even business opportunities from what we think of in Europe. So I think to build real partnerships, it takes obviously more consistent approach. It takes a lot of follow-up, not only pledges, again. And it takes a lot of efforts to properly transfer technology. It's also about IPs and so on and so on. So so I think, again, we live in the world where in order to gain trust and make business work, there's a lot of confidence building measures that need to be implemented, I think, from different sides. And we should start from there, I think. Better understanding of countries' needs and so on. Because, in Europe, there are many politicians who think of North Africa or Southern Mediterranean as a source of immigration, and they see it as a problem. So wherever you do wherever you should be focused on is, STEM immigration. Stop it. We are ready to, spend money on this and that. But this is very much, I think, a wrong way of approaching this. It is fair to say that the quicker pace of development in African countries, it benefits everyone. It's absolutely sure. But again, I think it takes step-by-step approach to make sure that first confidence is built, and then I think we should address some other pressing matters that make perception of costs, or as you said, unfairly more than it is. But I think there's also some work on African side. I think, for example, African countries have not really used extremely huge opportunity of working together through the African Union. There are also pledges, but not follow-ups. There's also a lot of instabilities. There's also, we read every day there's a new coup, or a new war emerging, maybe in Eastern Africa. So that's what probably make people, back up and say, okay, maybe it's not right yet. Maybe that's why there's unfair perception of risk in certain projects. That's one thing. But another thing is, I think, free trade zone, freedom of travel, and something that there's next door excellent example of how it was done in Europe. And European Union is a fantastic example, I think, that can be followed. I mean, my country, we're not there yet. We're not there yet in terms of the membership into the EU. We're working hard. Probably in the next couple of years it will happen. But it is clear benefits we see of joining the single market in making sure that there's a freedom of flow of goods, of services, people. That's extremely important benefit for everyone taking part in the process.
Mr. Reger and then Mr. Bao.
Just one sentence I want to add, especially here in Africa. Please consider working more with the Central and Eastern Europe. The reason why I say that, even though when I was in European Council and we had summits of European countries and African countries, it was more kind of, and we felt that out of history, was focused between the Western Europe and the African countries. But please, I think you will find very good partners who are very little informed about the progress that is happening here, and could be great, reliable partners where you can find partners that will give you more trust, more general or generosity approach, and I'm not trying to compete with the West, not at all, but complement. And I think that's very important because there are strong countries, big countries together. The Central and Eastern Europe has a lot of capital and would like to see your vision and hear more about it. And I speak mostly about governments, but not only governments and business. If there would be forums that could have this kind of debate in Central Europe, in several countries, I bet you that there's going to be much more interest into what you do here and much more awareness. So that's why I'm so glad that I could be here part of this discussion, but there is not that many of us, even though we come more often, and that's great. But we need you also being more active in our regions.
Thank you very much.
I was going to add that there is no lack of capital. There is no lack of interest for companies to invest in Global South. If the conditions are right, investment is there. And I think Dr. Abuzedi was saying also the cost of capital is higher. It is true. But as more investment come, confidence increases and cost of capital reduces, right? You also mentioned that a lot of money goes to pay the debt. We have a slightly different view as investor on that. We like that because the more that there is in a project, the less capital we put, and the more we can deploy our capital elsewhere to do more projects. So we think, good debt, well structured, is a good thing. But so, if you have the right conditions, investment will be there. With investment comes the innovation, the jobs, and the wealth, and of course the industry growth. Right? So interest is there. Just in case there's any doubt. I don't think there is doubt, but in case there is, interest is there.
Thank you. Okay, I will go with questions from the audience. Mr. Svoboda, you can go first.
My name is Svoboda. I'm from the Czech Republic. My question is this one. is a good decision to stop the delivery of gas from Russia forever. So is there any chance to reopen the Nord Stream 2 or Nord Stream 1 in the future? Because this is one question. A second question, which is dealing with the new alliance. So the comments about the new engagement of the United States next to Venezuela, because it's a military engagement and all the other superpowers are silent. So do you believe that that type of activity is maybe the beginning of the new alliance of the division of energy from the global point of view, Venezuela and Russia? So, because I do support the diversification of the sources, of course. Mainly the question is to the former Prime Minister from Slovakia. Thank you.
Very quickly, as you know, the politicians like to say never. So I don't think that never is a good word. And the second, as I said, it's not only about price, it's also about trust. So it depends. If the partner can prove that he's trustworthy, then of course you can start to consider. Right now, I don't see so many signs, or at some of the partners, none of the signs of being trustworthy. We have very fresh experience of the opposite. So I think when you have trust and you break it, it takes much longer to build it, as we all know. But I'm not saying it's not possible. I think it is possible. And as you said, diversification is important, and that's why we have to have several partnerships. And I like to see being these continents, being strong partners and allies, because then everybody, it's a win-win situation. I think that's what we'll have to look for. But right now, we are in a polarized world where we try to kind of fight against. And I don't think this is a good era, and I think we have to go back to the diplomacy, where the diplomacy was speaking behind the closed door and was trying to brush off the corners so we can have better cooperation long term. Right now we are not in that stage, so therefore I think we have to go through this difficult era, get back to strong diplomacy and not allow that we will get so polarized as we are right now.
Is there another speaker who wants to jump on this topic, whether energy can help solve crises, or is energy an obstacle to bring peace in some instance?
I mean, this is a very interesting question, because energy can be a source of conflict too, because I usually hear, trade for peace, more trade, more peace, but sometimes, as we know, it's also, conflicts begin because you want to control resources, and energy is it's no less. But I think that entangling energy systems can be also very important prevention of conflicts. Go back to early post-Second World War era in Europe, and that's how European Union started, with entangling steel and coal industries. That was the core of it. Based on that, it was built another community, and then it grew to be even political union, which is European Union. So entangling energy systems, interconnections, making sure that everybody remains very much a relevant player, it makes sense. At the same time, as Svoboda mentioned, the case of gas, Europe thought that by making sure that importing and using Russian gas will eventually prevent conflicts and so on, it wasn't the case, because there were also some other priorities. Whether it can be switched on again after a while, I don't know, but I think our long-term goal should be to shift away from fossil fuels anyway. So we probably should be working towards other sources of cleaner energy. But there was this also question related to the Venezuelan situation. We'll see what happens next, but it is true that Venezuela is one of the countries that holds incredible oil reserves. But it was also true that it was very crazy, the decision to declare part of the neighboring Guyana as their own country, and that area is also very rich with oil. So obviously a lot is going on related to fossil fuels still in today's world. And energy inevitably can be seen both as a source of conflict still, but also as could be potentially very important preventing mechanism. Depends how you use it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Mrs. Abu Zaid.
I'll take it from our side. I mean, whether it's conducive to conflict or conflict prevention. And by the way, this situation is not new. Those who are as young as I am would recall also 73 when the oil stopped. Following the war, Egypt and Israel. So. The world lived similar situation also, not that, at least for me, it's not that far ago, but also this is where the issue of developing renewable resources started, taking, scale and speed. But specifically for Africa, definitely having electrifying Africa, having the electricity chases away terrorism, chases away violence. It creates jobs, creates stability, creates economic prosperity. And when you have this, you don't want to risk it, going into terrorist attacks or going into groups that being recruited into these groups. So we also see it as a way of easing the tensions or the preventing conflicts or even a counter narrative and program against also terrorism. Having said that, and this is where we are at the crossroads, and I'm not saying just Africa. We all convinced of the importance of renewable energy, but we also have to be frank that we all woke up, all of us, not just Africa, we all woke up 2 or 3 years ago to the fact that the supply chain is dominated by one manufacturer. You were talking about gas, I'm talking about batteries, and it is not healthy. It's not about war or anything. It's never healthy, whether at the individual level or a nation or a continent. Never put all your eggs in one basket. You have to diversify. It's just common sense. None of us did it. Well, we didn't do it. Let's just learn and diversify, and the only way that we see to diversify is to use this opportunity again, and I'm repeating this to ourselves, also to Africans, use the opportunity to work with our partners to bring jobs here, to localize some of the factories here. Actually, even Chinese started, they have now a center because Zimbabwe stopped exporting lithium. So Chinese now built a lithium concentrate facility in Zimbabwe, which means that when there's a will, there's a way. They can do it on the ground. So that's a hint to Europeans, well, put your act together and start investing also in our minerals. So it is doable, but we have to be smart enough not to repeat also what happened with oil, where countries were invaded for their oil. We've seen this happening in more than one country, and it wasn't necessarily Venezuela. I don't want to name names. So it's not like we haven't seen it before, we've seen it before. But we also have seen the consequences of that. Let's just wisen up for once, all of us, and then do things differently. Otherwise, we are all doomed. And for this particular junction, we will all be doomed. It's not just one region.
Yeah, if you allow me just to complement what has been said, is what is the main lesson for the last 2 crises we face globally? COVID crisis, and of course the war in Ukraine and all the consequences of it, is of course the importance of the trust, as has been said, the importance of diversification. We cannot rely on one sources on all topics. And also another important lesson is, in fact, during the COVID crisis, we all was stuck in our home, and we discovered that staying at home, if we have good condition around, it's the best place where to be. So I believe that if we bring enough growth to Africa, electricity, water supply, and all the bases in one hand, in other hand, the technology evolution, internet, AI, today and tomorrow, will allow all people around the globe to get access to knowledge. You don't have to go to Harvard or Cambridge. You can have it at home, almost for free. So this will, in my opinion, change the opportunities and create a new balance between the South and the North. On the other hand, I think that, let's say, physical domination, it's not anymore one of the main targets. Not everywhere, of course. I'm talking at least between Europe and Africa. So I think that today there is some opportunity for a more complementarity between Africa and Europe. What is the need of Europe? Is they need energy, for example, they need resources. They, of course, have capital. They need laborers, but they don't want immigration. What is the need of Africa? We need growth. We need capital. And we need, of course, a kind of liberty for movement in order to enhance all of this. And today, I think there is an opportunity to have a more balanced partnership between the two sides, taking, as you said, energy available. We can bring industry here. People will stay in Africa. No need anymore to, if we can create jobs, we can create opportunities. And we have the example of Morocco, as we mentioned before. We talk about renewable energy, but also car manufacturing. Today, Morocco, I mean, one of the first good that Morocco is exporting is car, by the way. It's not anymore phosphate or agricultural product. Also in the field of aviation. So I think that the momentum can be very interesting to build a new partnership between South and North, especially in our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barrow, you wanted to add something here?
Yes, so crises are always good opportunities to rethink and innovate, right? So rethink and reconsider our beliefs. Some beliefs, for example, renewable energy is intermittent, thermal energy is dispatchable, so you shouldn't be doing renewable energy. Well, yes, thermal energy is dispatchable, but if there is no gas to feed your gas turbine, then it's not as dispatchable as we think it is. It breaks the belief that we should look a bit beyond, the system. And as you expand, then you look at different things. And innovation, not putting all your eggs in the same basket. So we want to bring, through technology, we want to bring addition to the energy system. I think it's not only about substitution. Of course, we want to bring down the CO2 emissions. So it's good to substitute when you can. But if you only substitute, then you have the same mistake again. You put all your eggs in the same basket. If you just add, then you expand your energy production matrix and you create more resilience. And when it comes to cost, for example, in Abu Dhabi, two weeks ago, we broke ground on a 1 gigawatt base load plant, PV plus batteries. So it's 5 gigawatt of PV, 19 gigawatt hours of batteries, and that will supply to the grid 1 gigawatt base load of clean renewable energy, 99% availability throughout the year. So it is possible, and the cost of that is less than thermal energy. So crises allow us to think differently, force us to think differently, and force us to innovate as well. And technology is there to implement systems that are more resilient.
Thank you. I think there was another question from the audience. Maybe we have time to take it. Yes, sir. Front row. Can you stand up, maybe, just to get him?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I am an international student from Nigeria. I'm currently studying in Morocco, of course. And based on the global energy agenda, I want to ask, given the shifting of global energy alliance how does Nigeria and Morocco gas pipeline project reposition West African and North Africa within global gas supply chain, especially in relation to Europe's search for diversified energy partners? Because there's a project right now going on between Nigeria and Morocco in terms of gas pipeline. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who wants to answer this question?
Yeah, maybe I will take one as a Moroccan representative and also involved in the Atlantic gas pipeline, because initially we were talking about Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, and of course the targets is to reach all West African countries through this project, almost 15 countries. And of course, within this area, we have at least 3 main producers of gas, which is Nigeria and recently Senegal and Mauritania. All other countries needs gas, so really this project can bring a real change, a real improvement on the energy supply, on the electrification of this area, and also support on the energy transition, because as we all know and we discuss about it, renewables is good, but renewables alone doesn't support a grid. We need storage, we need flexibility, and gas is basically the energy transition fuel. So we will continue to need gas, and of course this project is very important to support all these countries to enhance electricity access, to get cheaper electricity, because one of the things which is important is Africans are paying electricity very, very high price. We were talking about 600 million that have no access, but the others, they are paying it high. So having energy through renewables with the mix of gas will support also to optimize the prices and to enhance more. And this is also an opportunity to export, because the idea is, because Morocco is interconnected with Spain and Europe, to create a real hub and exchange between the 2 regions within this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there another question from the audience, maybe? Yeah, at least 1 or 2 questions, or 3 questions. If you keep them short, your question, and if the answers are quite short too, we will have time to take the 3 of them. So I think it was on the front row. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this very interesting panel. I'm very alarmed with the global shift in the energy agenda and the shift to batteries, and how the African countries, which are very rich with rare elements and metals, are and could avoid the conflicts that are fueled by the military complex, the global military complex, and the investment in conflicts. So I think everyone in the panel with the different representations from different geographical areas in the world love to see reflections and hear about how can the global system as well prevent this from happening again, and as Dr. Amani said, avoid the repetition of the oil curse. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind if I take the 3 questions at once and then you answer? So, second question, sir, or did you have? Oh, so, okay, I don't know. Oh, over there.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I know we're talking about energy, we talk about fossil fuels and renewables, but I want to ask a question about human energy and the question about trust. And I want us to think 20 years from now. Are we building trust among the young people who are going to run the world in 20 years? Or are they not part of the conversation? Because I think looking at the agenda, a lot of focus is on what's happening now. But my concern is if we're going to build trust, the young people in the audience are supposed to be the ones thinking about how to work with their peers around the world. Any thoughts on how we forget about the older generation and start preparing the young people to run the world? Because if not, we'll be having this same conversation 20 years ago, because the young people in Africa may not trust the young people in Europe. how do we bridge the trust so we don't have ourselves in this situation 20 years from now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe one last question. Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you. I'm Fatima Zahra Dridriya. I'm training in solar energy at H.E.Mr. So I would like to ask about the global energy transition. What are the key challenges the world is facing to move from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and how can young people contribute to this transition? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, who wants to answer first? You can go ahead, Mr. Again.
I will very briefly to the youth. I think very good point. Thank you, sir, for bringing it up. And we, all the generation, we somehow forget about the young generations. And if I would have one advice to the young generation, and the most important, I would say, avoid greed. In all your decision making, avoid greed. Because at the end of the day, this is the core of all the conflicts for the future. And energy could be really, and it will be, if we avoid the greed, it can be a great instrument of cooperation. And I think that's the great opportunity that is given here. And speaking on the fossil and the renewables, I think we have to look at the price element is very important. Trust is a new element, but price is still there. And even in Central Europe or even in Europe, we speak about energy so much because it became very expensive. It's better now, but it's still more expensive what it was, and it makes us not compatible anymore with the other regions in the world. Therefore, I see a great partner in Africa in bringing competitiveness, in having labor, energy, and partnership together. We two continents could be so strong that we could be leaders together. Of course, this is future talks right now. But that's where I see the opportunity, and that's what you young people need to see, that partnerships are much better than conflicts. Build partnership, avoid greed. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Razaev, and maybe Mr.
Thank you. I'd like to pick up 2 points in particular. One about the participation of the young generations in decision-making and so on. Many of you know that Azerbaijan's been chairing the non-aligned movement for 4 years, and this is the second largest global organization, 120 member states, and we are in fact the global majority, right? So we're not a minority, we're not global south, we're not an excluded group, we are the majority. So one of the initiatives of the Azerbaijani chairmanship was to actually, for the first time in the history of the NAM, is to establish and launch the youth movement of the NAM. And we were proud to do that. We established it, and the secretariat is in Baku. So I would encourage all the young people, students, activists from all the NAM member states to contribute to the non-aligned movement youth organization and to come up with ideas, initiatives, creative solutions. Because even sky is not the limit when a lot of young people get together. Second, about the prevention and preemption of conflicts around the resources, around oil, gas, renewables, rare earth and critical minerals. Again, after World War II, which was mentioned a couple of times already at this panel, the humankind have come up with a set of collective solutions and rules commonly known as the international law. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, but it's the best alternative to perpetual cycle of conflicts, wars, hatred, and so on and so forth. Regretfully, great powers, from time to time, they prefer to ignore international law and instead use the principle which they like very much, which goes something like, what mine is mine, but what yours is negotiable. We strongly are opposed to this, and again, we believe that the international law, as imperfect as it is, still represents the best guarantee and the best framework for maintenance of international peace, security, and stability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Parlant de lois et de règles, je vois depuis quelques instants des signes évidents que nous avons atteint la limite de temps qui nous était accordé. Malheureusement, on va devoir s'arrêter là. Je vous invite à vous joindre à moi pour remercier nos panélistes pour leur générosité et le temps qu'ils ont pris, la qualité de leurs interventions cet après-midi. Merci à vous. Je vous souhaite une bonne après-midi. Merci.